The Fight Show on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Get up to a $1,000 deposit match when you sign up at underdogfantasy.com and use the promo code SGPN. That's underdogfantasy.com and the promo code SGPN.
And I think these guys don't know what they're getting themselves involved in. And I see the sparring partners they're bringing in, and it's just no one that can match what I'm capable of in the ring, and it's going to be a very upsetting night for him.
Julio, que te va a romper tu madre, güey. Más. Better said than done. You're going to fuck him up. I think that's the easier way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
¿En español? Lo que tú quieras, whatever you feel.
English, please.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
English,
Jay,
please.
for talk, you're better than me. That's for sure. And boxing, fight out Saturday.
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is a former world champion, a cruiserweight world champion, the same weight as me, the same size as me, and 20 years more pro boxing experience than me. For you inbreds, let's get the excuses out of the way. Last week, Paddy Pimblett beat Michael Chandler, and the whole world lost their mind. But not a single person mentioned Michael Chandler's age. And that's because he's still within his prime ages. The same age as Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. If people didn't have a problem with Paddy, then why do they have a problem with me? So when I beat him, don't even try to cry about his age.
To make that fight happen. I think it's a great fight.
Jake Paul will be fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. on June 28th in Anaheim, California. He has to win, and not only does he have to win, but he has to do it in a way that gets the people to say, this is a better version of Jake than I've seen. You're going to end up at a tree. If Jake Paul can hurt or even wobble Chavez Jr., it's something that Canelo didn't do or couldn't do, so it's a real fight.
You are listening to The Fight Show here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. You can follow the Sports Gambling Podcast Network on X at the SGP Network. That's at the SGP Network, and also at Gambling Podcast. That's at Gambling Podcast. You can follow me on X. I am the host of the Soccer Gambling Podcast. You can follow me at SGP Soccer. That's at SGP Soccer. Don't forget, NASCAR's in-season tournament is underway, and we're running a free contest. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NASCAR contest for your chance to win a $200 gift card. And make sure to subscribe to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. The best way to make sure you never miss any of the free picks or pods from the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is to download the SGPN app. It really is the easiest and most convenient way to make sure you never miss any of our free picks or any of our free pods. Also, if you're looking for free picks and free pods from me, be sure to search for Lock Betting, both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, for the Lock Betting YouTube channel and the Lock Betting podcast. We're currently taking a break for the summer, but there will be bonus podcasts from Lock Betting during the soccer season, covering leagues that we don't cover on the Soccer Gambling Podcast. Also, be sure to follow the YouTube channel, as we will be posting content on there again soon. And we're already starting to post content now for the Soccer Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. So a couple of content channels there for you to follow on YouTube for additional free picks and betting information relating to soccer. And the Lock Betting channel will also delve into other sports, as it did previously before we took the break because I got logged out of it. I'm now back into it as I picked up my phone from Los Angeles, and I'll be doing content now. I'm back in the UK. But if you just want to get all of my official plays and just make sure you play everything that I play, everything that goes towards my members' tracked and transparent spreadsheet, head over to lockbetting.com. That's where you can get the picks for my premium pay service, and that's a pay service that has delivered 144 months in a row of transparent and track profit. You can sign up for the cost of a 1 unit play. So if you have money to lose on 1 unit plays, if you're following these clowns on Twitter or elsewhere, and they're giving you 5, 10, 20 unit plays, these monopoly money garbage plays that they don't play themselves, then you surely have one unit to put to the side and invest it in signing up for lock betting and getting yourself winning plays every single month. Because this service has been undefeated for 12 years since it started. It started 12 years ago. It started 144 months ago. And we've had 144 months in a row of transparent and tracked profit. And this is a transparent and tracked fact verified by existing members. All the spreadsheets are there. In fact, instead of going to lock betting to see them via Google Docs, I've made it even easier by now starting to post them on Instagram and on X. So if you go to the Instagram account, which is a hub for everything we do, which is @lockbetting, you'll be able to see the latest spreadsheets posted there. You'll see the latest 3 spreadsheets pinned to the top of the page. They're all done via screenshots, so even an idiot can see all the plays we do, the bets we do, the sports we bet on, and most importantly, how we sensibly manage a bankroll. All you've got to do is scroll across, the spreadsheets are there via screenshots, and you'll see everything we do. You also see a monthly recap where I recap the month and look ahead to the following month. And at the top of the page, as I said, the latest 3 months are pinned right there. As I said, also, it's a hub for everything we do. So you'll find free betting information there, free betting videos, free plays, and it's also a place to contact me if you have any questions about the service. If you don't have Instagram for any reason and you can't follow the Instagram @lockbetting, then I've already given you X account where you can contact me on X instead, and that is @SGP Soccer. That's @SGP Soccer. So moving on with this edition of the Fight Show, we are going to go between both boxing and UFC, starting with the boxing and then moving on to the UFC card tomorrow night, covering a couple of fights that are going down there. Obviously, there isn't huge interest in the UFC at the moment. The biggest UFC story of the week was Jon Jones deciding to retire. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding that as to whether Jones retired because he really wanted to retire, because he was worried that he couldn't beat Tom Aspinall, or whether it was because UFC asked him to retire to get away from these criminal charges that might be coming Jon Jones's way once again, something that they've been familiar with and something that they might want to distance himself from nowadays. So lots of stuff going around, but at the end of the day, Jon Jones versus Aspinall won't be happening. Aspinall is now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world instead of the interim. And the UFC have lost yet another star for an organisation that are massively lacking star power, yet are overcharging for their tickets and their pay-per-views, putting on pay-per-views that used to be fight night cards and putting on fight night cards that are frankly unwatchable. So they need a star to come through. And it isn't helping that your Russians, Uzbekistanians and other people from that type of region are coming in and dominating your sport. Not because I have anything against those guys. They are unbelievable athletes, but they don't exactly have the charisma to carry the company. When you look at the current landscape of UFC and you look at the stars on top of UFC, when you look at Islam Makhachev, when you look at Diashvili, when you look at Topuria, when you look at Ankalaev, when you look at Jack Della Maddalena, who's actually a lot better than Bilal Muhammad, who was on top. When you're looking at Andre Pantoja, these aren't guys who are going to sell pay-per-view. They could have really done with Alex Pereira not losing. They could have really done with Jon Jones not retiring. They could have really done with Israel Adesanya not suffering the losses that he suffered recently. Because you couple all that with the loss of Conor McGregor, the retirements of Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar. Obviously, you're looking at those happening with Brock in particular over a decade ago. But these are significant losses for UFC, and they've never, ever replaced that star power. Obviously, Conor McGregor came in when you lost Brock and you lost Rousey, and he carried the load. And now you haven't got anybody to carry the load. Yes, Jon Jones came in and did well for a couple of pay-per-views, but Jon Jones only fought twice over the last couple of years. He only fought once a year. So they really are now struggling to replace that star power, which is why it is somewhat underwhelming to see this weekend's card as a pay-per-view that you guys need to buy. It's a hard sell for pay-per-view, and it's a hard sell to get people in the building to pay the ticket prices that UFC are currently commanding. So we're going to start with the boxing first. We have 2 major stars returning to the boxing ring this weekend. In fact, Deontay Wilder is fighting on Friday night. So that fight is just a few hours away. trying to get this show out in time so some people can hear it before Deontay Wilder steps out there to have his fight. But at the end of the day, there isn't really too much you can bet on this fight. There's only really two ways for me that you can bet this, as Wilder returns to the heavyweight division to take on Tyrrell Anthony Herndon, where Wilder is a 1-20 favourite here. It's 20-1 on the draw, and Herndon is a 10-1 underdog. Wilder is at best price 1-6 minus 600 to get the finish here via TKO KO, whilst Herndon is at 12-1. Wilder 8-1 decision, 20-1 here on Herndon via decision. Wilder to get this done inside the first 5 rounds is at 1-3 minus 300. If we look at other group rounds here instead, because obviously that's very, very short, Deontay Wilder to win it in rounds 1 or 2 is at 6-5 plus 120. Wilder to win it in rounds 3 or 4 is at 3-1. 5 or 6 is at 7-1, and everything else is bigger than 12-1. The fight to go over 4 rounds, so for the 4th round to actually start, that's priced up at 5-4 plus 125. For the 5th round to start, you can get 2-1. For the 6th round to start, you can get plus 250. So Wilder very much expected to win this, and to win this early inside the first 1 to 3 rounds. That is the expectation. He has picked an opponent here who is somewhat of a tomato can here in Herndon. Herndon doesn't have a terrible record, but he has never stepped up to face anybody in the same bracket as Deontay Wilder. He's a warm body here with a 24-5 record, but he's been knocked out 4 times before the end of the 3rd round when he stepped up in class. And there is still time here, I believe, for Deontay Wilder to look like the Deontay Wilder of old. But that would only be something that you see because of the level of opponent that Herndon is. I don't think that Wilder actually still exists when it comes to boxing at an elite level. This, at the end of the day, is a Deontay Wilder who has now lost 4 of his last 5 fights. The last 2 of them coming off that Tyson Fury trilogy. Obviously, the first fight was a draw, then Fury won the next 2. Wilder was very competitive in that final fight, also competitive in the first fight where it was a draw and he put Tyson Fury down twice. But ultimately, in his last 2 fights, they have been very humbling experiences for Wilder, where he was outpointed by Joseph Parker relatively convincingly. And then he was also beaten by Zhilei Zhang, where he was actually knocked out, showing that the punch resistance of Deontay Wilder is seemingly now gone. So at 39 years old, that does beg the question, why is Deontay Wilder returning to the ring? For me, it looks like that power might have finally gone. It was always a miracle to me that Deontay Wilder ever had this power. If you look at Deontay Wilder's size, if you look at his legs, he doesn't have the legs of a heavyweight boxer. He has chicken legs, matchstick legs, and it was always a minor miracle to me that Wilder could produce the power that he could produce. Not just because he was powerful, but he was the most powerful puncher in the entire division. In fact, it was measured. He was historically powerful. It was unbelievable what Wilder could produce and what he was doing to opponents. He didn't need to know how to box because he could get away with it. Obviously, over time, he came to suffer the consequences of not being this polished boxer and not perfecting his craft. But in his defense, he got away with it for such a long time until he met a more superior pugilist in Tyson Fury, and he wasn't able to get away with it there. I felt like those fights took a lot out of Wilder, and he's just never been the same since. Is it a case of Wilder doesn't need to fight anymore? He's comfortable after those Fury fights with the money that he has, or has the punch power just gone? Is it a case of hunger, or is it a case of the body just not being able to do what it does? Because, of course, there is a saying that it's very difficult to get up and train when you're waking up in silk sheets, something that people have said about Conor McGregor. Once that hunger goes, once you're not starving for money, once you're not starving for fame, once you're not starving for generational wealth, which Deontay Wilder now has, it's very difficult to motivate yourself. So has it been a motivational issue, or has it been a case of Deontay Wilder just not being the same guy? I think the truth might be a combination of both, and it's Wilder is returning now after those 2 losses. I imagine he's going to be pretty motivated to look good here in this fight, because the main motivation here is probably realistically not to get back up to holding a world title or setting up any kind of unification fight. It's probably just to get past this obstacle, get past this tomato can, look good so that he impresses, so that he can sell the AJ fight to people, because that will probably be the next obstacle. Now, that fight is definitely happening 5 to 10 years too late, because it shouldn't happen. It should have happened while both guys were undefeated, before Ruiz humbled AJ and took his O, and whilst Deontay Wilder still had one. That was the time to do it. That's when it was a mega fight, and that's when it would have been a fight that would have broken records. It would probably now still sell out a stadium, and it would probably still be interest in it, but it's important for Deontay Wilder to obviously win and look convincing, and maybe AJ himself is going to have himself a tomato can fight before the end of the year, before we can finally get these two together for one final fight, and it will be the final fight for the loser. And the winner, which is probably going to be AJ at this point, will probably go on to force Tyson Fury out of retirement and have that fight, another fight that is probably happening 5 or 10 years too late. So that's probably what the future looks like for the heavyweight division, and therefore the future for Tyrrell Herndon is to probably get knocked out inside 3 rounds. But after watching Deontay Wilder in his last 2 fights, I did say that I wouldn't bet him ever again and that he should just retire, and it looked like that he had, and here we are. He's boxing again tonight, and for that reason, I have to sprinkle on Tyrrell Anthony Herndon to win this fight at 10-1. I don't think it's going to happen. I'll be absolutely stunned if I make any money here. If I'm going to try and stay up and watch the fight, but if I don't, if I fall asleep and I wake up to the result that Herndon's won, and I have £110 in my account because I bet £10 on Herndon to win, I'll be absolutely stunned, because it will mean that I'm absolutely right. My original take about Wilder was right, that he's completely washed and he no longer belongs in a boxing ring. He doesn't have the hunger, and he doesn't have the athletic ability to do what he once did. And the miracles that Deontay Wilder was able to produce, the power that he was once able to deliver, which carried him to much success, is now completely gone. What I expect to see is Deontay Wilder winning inside the first 3 rounds. In fact, I don't even expect Herndon to get into round 3. And the bet that I would recommend to you if you want to make money from this fight is to take Deontay Wilder in rounds 1 or 2. But even then, if you are going to take a unit on that, rather than winning the full £120 from that, just take £10 and put it to the side and just take a bet on Herndon, just in case this guy, Deontay Wilder, is completely washed. And if you're willing to just make £100 from this fight, take another tenner and just bet it on Deontay Wilder to win specifically in round 3, just in case you don't get it done inside the first 6 minutes, just in case there's a little bit of rust. You can still win some of your money back by Wilder winning in the 3rd round at the price of 8-1. But I think the most sensible way to bet this is to take Wilder in the group stage, in the group betting market, at rounds 1 to 2, to win inside those first 2 rounds, to win inside those first 6 minutes at 6-5 plus 120. So moving on to the other major fight going down this weekend, of course, you have Jake Paul returning to the ring, the problem child, whose dad once told me he wasn't a problem at all. He was a wonderful child. I actually spoke to the Paul's dad once outside of a hotel in Los Angeles. So not really the problem child, but he is a problem for many boxing fans, because they hate seeing how this fight receives more attention than other more important fights on paper that are happening on a almost weekend basis, and proven by the fact that we do episodes of the fight show selectively, and often we do miss out major boxing matches that are going down, yet we always make it a priority to cover Jake Paul. Why? Because Jake Paul is money. Jake Paul garners interest. Jake Paul will do decent pay-per-view numbers this week. Jake Paul is getting a lot of publicity. Jake Paul was the guy who appeared on Piers Morgan this week. That's why we have to cover it. So we are going to cover this fight here against Julio Cesar Chavez. Before we look at the odds and before we begin breaking it down, let me take this quick little pause here to tell you guys that we're brought to you by MyBookie.ag. MyBookie is your place to bet on every sport, including the MLB, WNBA, golf, your football futures for the upcoming NFL season, your college football futures as well, the FIFA Club World Cup, which I'm covering exclusively over on the Soccer Gambling podcast. I'm doing a show nearly every single day. My round of 16 show will be dropping early in the morning, covering the first half of those round of 16 ties. And also the WWE just dropped another episode of the Fight Show covering WWE's Night of Champions show in Saudi Arabia tomorrow. 55-minute show for you there, guys, and you can bet that over on mybookie.ag. So head over to mybookie and use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Terms and conditions apply, but that's mybookie.ag and the promo code SGPN. Let me also utilize this pause to tell you guys about the Circa Ultimate Fantasy Football giveaway. Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas are giving away an Ultimate Fantasy Football experience for a 12-person league to draft in Vegas and be treated like VIPs during your stay. You'll get a limo ride from the airport, a 5K tab for Stadium Swim, and a hotel stay for you and 11 of your league mates. Now, if you haven't been to Circa or experienced Circa Swim before, you have to go if you're into sports betting. It is the ultimate sports book to sit in and watch sports. Circa Swim is obviously a one-off venue which only exists at Circa, so you have to go and check it out. And you can always get 15% off with Circa properties by using our promo code, which is SGP15. But to enter the contest, your last chance, because it ends on June the 30th, it's your last chance to enter the Circa Ultimate Fantasy Football giveaway. So to enter, go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Circa. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/CIRCA Circa. Let me also tell you guys here that Underdog Best Ball Mania is happening right now, all summer long, giving away $50 million in prizes, including $2 million to first place. No waiver wire, no arguments about trades. Best Ball is the best way to play fantasy football, and you can sign up and get involved by heading over to Underdog Fantasy and claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus credits. Go to underdogfantasy.com and use the promo code SGPN. And finally, you've heard us guys talking about Rhythm before, and they've just dropped their game-changing feature called Power Trends. These are AI-detected patterns where Rhythm model consistently won and has a high ROI as well. Power Trends are updated daily and they're exclusive to Rhythm. So if you want to get involved, be sure to download the Rhythm app now. And you can do so by heading over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM Rhythm. So let's move on by looking at the Jake Paul fight next, as the problem child returns to the ring. He's the 1-6 favorite to beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who is a 4-1 underdog. It's 20-1 here on the draw. Jake Paul is available at 6-4 plus 150 to get the stoppage here. He's available at 6-5 plus 120 to win via a decision. Chavez Jr. is at 7-1 via TKO KO. He's 11-1 to get this done via a decision. In the group round betting, Jake Paul is at 5-1 to get it done in rounds 1-5. And he's at 4-1 to get it done in rounds 6-10. If you want to reduce those rounds, Paul in 1-2 is at 20-1. Paul in 3-4 is at 12-1. Paul in 5-6 at 8-1. Same price, 4-7-8. And 12-1 in rounds 9-10. Fight to go to distance, yes, 4-6 minus 150. No is at 11-10. If you want to look at the double chance market, Jake Paul in rounds 1-5 or points is at 1-2. Jake Paul in rounds 6-10 or points is at 2-5. With Julio Cesar Chavez in the same market at 6-1 for both. So rounds 1-5 or points 6-1. Rounds 6-10 or points also at 6-1. So this is a real opponent in the eyes of some for Jake Paul. They really do think that this is a real opponent. Others are saying that why are you fighting somebody of this age? Obviously, Julio Cesar Chavez is well past his peak. But this is a former world champion that Jake Paul is getting into the ring with. And whilst he is past his peak, he's not of the same age of Mike Tyson. So I genuinely do believe that this should be much more of a competitive fight. I believe what we saw last time was Jake Paul taking his foot off the gas and genuinely trying not to hurt a very, very elderly Mike Tyson. I think he realised that he probably wasn't going to gain too much from knocking out Mike Tyson. It wasn't going to do too much for Jake Paul's career or too much for his popularity. No more so than just getting in there with Mike Tyson and winning the fight. I think the knockout would have been significant though. I think maybe Jake Paul wasn't aware of the fact that a lot of people on certain podcasts and YouTube channels and ex-boxers were picking Mike Tyson. You would think that with Jake Paul's media team, he would have been aware of that noise, and perhaps that would have motivated him a bit more to shut people up and make a statement. And maybe that was something that was agreed before, that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson were both going to coast through the fight, and it was going to look a lot more like sparring, like it did. And that's the thing that you never really know about these Jake Paul fights. Are they actually real? Obviously, they are real to some extent. But what's agreed beforehand when it comes to levels of sparring, levels of competitiveness? How much scripting really goes into this, if any at all? Are they completely legit? Is it a complete shoot? Are they real boxing matches completely, which they should be, given the fact they are genuine sanctioned fights that go towards people's records? Or is there an element of WWE involved? Is there any discussions about what someone's going to do, what this person's going to do, what that person's going to do going into the fight? We just don't know. We expect that everything is real here, but there's also obviously an element of cherry picking. I don't think Jake Paul ever picks a fight that he thinks he's going to lose. I think that many were surprised inside boxing that he ended up actually losing to Tommy Fury. That was a real fight that Jake Paul was involved in, and he ended up losing it via a decision. I still think if they were to have a rematch in future, based on the fact that Tommy Fury's pretty much done nothing since then and almost got beaten by KSI, that Jake Paul will go on and win that rematch. I also think Jake Paul is capable of taking care of KSI. And I also believe in the future that he'd be capable of getting rid of Conor McGregor. If Conor McGregor was able to get himself straight and was able to actually pass a drugs test for a few months, and he was able to get himself in the boxing ring, I believe Jake Paul would be capable of beating Conor McGregor. But what about the immediate future, which is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? For me, this is his biggest test to date so far. He might be 39 years old. His best years might be behind him, but he's not a near 60-year-old Mike Tyson. He's still a competent opponent who was able to beat Uriah Hall on points in July 2024. This was after a 3-year hiatus, after losing to Anderson Silva, and that is a common opponent. Paul claimed a routine points win over the former UFC star the following year, and for me, that's an indicator as to how this one may go. I think Jake Paul probably wins this on the scorecards once again. Chavez Jr. has been stopped only twice in a 61-fight career. I think Paul could probably get a knockdown in this fight, as he's claimed knockdowns in all of his fights prior to that points win against Mike Tyson, where he was coasting. But I don't think he'll be able to stop Chavez Jr. I think that Chavez Jr. will be too wise, too savvy, has too much boxing experience. At the end of the day, we're talking about a genuine former world champion here, a former middleweight world champion in Chavez Jr. So this is a significant scout because, as I said, he's not 60 like Mike Tyson. He is a competent opponent on paper, whilst way past his best years. Jake Paul doesn't take fights that he thinks he's going to lose. And as I said, that was a mistake, probably taking a fight against Tommy Fury. Maybe it wasn't a mistake in terms of the guys who pick his opponents, who advise him. Maybe Jake Paul just massively underperformed on that day. I think it was a combination of both. I think for me, Jake Paul is constantly improving, although not enough to ever be a world champion like he thinks he wants to be. And he'll never step in the ring with Canelo. If he does, he would not last longer than 180 seconds. Canelo would take Jake Paul out in the first round. And that will always be the case. As long as there is a Canelo and he's active in a boxing ring, and as long as there's a Jake Paul, he'll never be able to beat Canelo. Now, if Canelo loses to Terence Crawford and decides to take another fight on that Saudi contract and loses that, and then goes on some kind of losing streak and decides to retire, takes 3-4 years out of the sport, and then is bought out of retirement by Jake Paul, that's a different fight entirely. And that's kind of what we're talking about here when it comes to Chavez Jr. This is a guy who took 3 years out after losing to Anderson Silva. Jake Paul then beat Anderson Silva the following year on points. Chavez Jr. then returned in 2024, last year, a year ago now, to take on Uriah Hall, won via decision. And now, after another year off, he's taking on Jake Paul. So this is the type of fight that's all set up for Jake Paul to win. For me, this one can really only go one way. But I don't think it's going to end with Jake Paul getting a knockout. Many people felt that's what should have happened with the Tyson fight. But I genuinely believe he was coasting, and I genuinely believe that was part of some pre-fight agreement. And I genuinely believe the truth when it comes to Jake Paul fights and pre-fight agreements, the truth lies somewhere in between. If it's a no-name and he's going on there and he wants to pad out his record with a win over a so-called boxer, I believe that's a real fight. I believe this is a real fight. I believe when it comes to going into the ring with a near 60-year-old Mike Tyson, discussions are had about safety and whatnot, because you don't want somebody dying in there or ending up with a serious injury and serious questions being asked about why that fight was ever made in the first place. So I believe it's horses for courses. I believe different fights have different discussions, and I'm absolutely fine with that, because as long as fights like this are genuine, I don't care what happens when you step in the ring with Mike Tyson. At the end of the day, we bet that fight here on the Fight Show, and we're completely on the right side of it. And at the end of the day, we're only here to make money. We don't really care what goes into the outcomes or why fights end up the way they do. As long as we're on the right side of the outcome and we make money from it, that's all we should really care about. And all we really care about now for this particular fight is for Jake Paul to win it, and for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. to have enough wits about him, to have enough resilience to be able to see the final bell and respectably lose this on the scorecards. Not that it is probably seen as a respectable loss for any of these guys, any of these genuine athletes, any of these MMA fighters, any of these genuine boxers to lose to this guy, still perceived as a YouTuber. But at this juncture, many people have suffered the same fate, so it isn't the humiliation that it once was. So I'm going to take Jake Paul to get it done on the scorecards here. This is a plus money selection for you guys, and Jake Paul to get it done on the scorecards is available at the price of 6-5 plus 120 here for this one.
I represent the new generation of mixed martial arts. I'm the best fighter in the world.
Devastating.
This kid is a finisher.
The first man to knock out Max Holloway. Think about what might be next.
Now it's time to become a lightweight world champion. I want to hold that belt too.
This is my year. But if there is anyone that can give Topuria problems, it is one of the greatest of all time. Charles Oliveira.
His name is plastered across the UFC record books. Most submissions and finishes in UFC history.
Charles Oliveira is a monster on the ground or on his feet.
I feel so powerful at 155. I'm going to touch his chin and it will explode.
One of the best fighters alive. An absolute assassin. These two together is guaranteed fireworks.
One of the most dominant champions in the sport.
Just puts people's lights out.
I'm going for the kill shots.
International Fight Week is always big.
So let's close out with a little bit of UFC on this edition of the Fight Show. This is supposed to be International Fight Week, and as I previously mentioned, the UFC are significantly lacking star power when it comes to the ability to make compelling matchups that are going to draw in a casual audience. And even this fight, it's a hard sell for the hardcore UFC fans, but it's because Ilia Topuria has been absolutely dominant, and it's almost near impossible to make a case for Charles Oliveira to win this fight, even though he has been a phenomenal fighter. He's a Hall of Fame fighter and will go down as a UFC legend. But it's very difficult to build a case for him here. He is a plus 300 underdog. He's at 3-1. Topuria is at minus 400, 1-4. And I would argue that he could be even shorter than that. He has looked absolutely sensational in UFC so far. 16-0. Flattening 2 featherweight goats back to back. First of all, it was Alexander Volkanovski, who he floored with a right hook. Then it was Max Holloway, who he dropped with a left hook. The Holloway fight was particularly unbelievable. We've never seen Holloway react to punches the way he did against Topuria. Some people were saying it might be Holloway's age and mileage and everything was creeping up to him, but at the end of the day, nobody's ever done that to him before, and you have to give Topuria credit because you just have to look at that and say, he's crisp, he's powerful, and he's unbelievable, and he's probably unbeatable as well at this juncture. So Oliveira, he does come into this off the back of dominating Michael Chandler in his last fight. He is definitely a legend. The size difference in this fight will be noticeable. Oliveira is 3 inches taller than Topuria, so he'll have approximately a 5-inch reach advantage in this fight. If Topuria was fighting someone younger and more specialized in striking, I think that would be more of a concern. However, I think Topuria's quickness will make up for that reach advantage quite significantly. He moves on his opponents with lightning speed, cracks them with short hooks way before they're even able to respond with a counter, and I think that will be the same for Oliveira. I do have a sneaky feeling we're going to see exactly what we've seen in the last few fights with Topuria, where he walks Oliveira to the back of the fence and just unleashes punches that puts him down. Oliveira is good at everything when it comes to MMA, and if he, in those exchanges, can manage to clinch Topuria and pull him down, then he may be able to cause Topuria some trouble. But Topuria is even very good at grappling himself, and he does have some wicked front chokes as well. So even when you're building a small case for the underdog, you have a counterpoint there for Topuria. So I do believe that Topuria is going to be able to manage the distance enough to make sure this fight stays standing, which means Oliveira virtually has no chance. He'll be confident enough in his striking to give Topuria a matchup and to hold him off for a little while. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the books here and say that Topuria does get this done relatively early in the fight. Oliveira's leaky defense as of late, paired with the fact that Topuria doesn't really need to land a lot of strikes to finish someone, makes me think that Vegas are completely right about the way they've priced this fight up. The total for this fight, as far as rounds go, is just set at over under 1.5. The over is actually at minus money at minus 145, with the under at plus 115. But I've actually found a bet over at DraftKings, which I prefer to that, because what you can do at DraftKings is make a bet builder, and they have Topuria to win via KO, TKO, and you can pair it with under 4.5 rounds to get yourself a price of minus 125. For me, that's a great bet. I also would not dissuade you from taking Topuria just to win the fight with over 1.5 rounds tacked on, because I do believe that this does find its way over, because I believe that Oliveira will be resilient enough to hang with Topuria until Topuria eventually takes him out. But I do believe we'll navigate 7.5 minutes before Topuria finds the mark and finishes Oliveira somewhere in the late in the second round, or maybe early in the third. I don't think it will get to the championship rounds. I don't think Oliveira can hang in there for 15 minutes with this particular opponent, but ultimately Topuria is going to get the win, and he's going to get it done via TKO KO. Now, if you can't bet the DraftKings bet, if you can't get the minus 125, it is 4-6 minus 150 on Ilia Topuria just to win via TKO KO. So that's not too bad. I'm just trying to extract a little bit more value out of it. I'm just taking the final 2.5 minutes out of the fight and giving myself an improved price, because minus 150 and minus 125 are very different, because your profit for one is $13 more for a $100 bet. So minus 125 25 returns you 180 for an £80 profit, whereas taking 46 minus 150 returns you 167 for a $67 or £67 profit, depending on your currency. So if you can get the DraftKings bet, if you are over there, take that one, pair it up with the under 4.5 with Topuria to win via TKO KO. But Topuria via TKO KO at 46 minus 150 is absolutely fine. And that is ultimately going to be the lock on the show that does edge out Jake Paul to win via decision, even though I'm very high on both. To get all of my official plays for boxing and UFC, to get my plays for tomorrow's UFC card, including all the prelims, head over to lockbetting.com. Lockbetting.com, the service that has delivered 144 months in a row of transparent and track profit, undefeated every single month for 12 years. Good luck with all your bets as always, guys, and thanks for listening.